Yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Ben Yee.
I'm Elissa Stein.
What are we talking about today, Elissa?
Today we're talking about local stuff.
Ooh.
We're talking about, we've been talking about local politics, we've been talking about local political clubs.
Yeah.
Because we are local. But what I want to talk about today is, what do they do? And how do they actually serve the people? Because everybody says get involved in local politics, go join a Democratic club. Why? To what end?
Or community board or something like this.
Or community board.
If you're in New York City.
Were due a couple of days ago.
On the 9th?
On the 9th. But there will be another
Did you apply?
second. I ended up not applying.
Oh.
My plate is pretty full this go round, but maybe next time. But I want to start with a quick story about something that happened to me in the community and where I realized that I don't know where to go to report or help.
Let's hear it.
It's about the AIDS Memorial in the Triangle Park on 12th Street and 7th Avenue.
Of course.
And I was sitting and having coffee with a friend and saw people using that beautiful fountain as an exercise platform.
Right.
Planking,
Sure.
push-ups,
Yeah.
jumping jacks. And then when he left, some kids rode bikes around and used it as a platform for their dirt bike practicing.
Interesting.
My friend said, I can't believe how disrespectful that is, that people are using the AIDS Memorial as an exercise platform. And so we had a long talk about it, and I talked to other people in the community who said maybe they meant it to be part of the public landscape, and so they kind of factored that into the design, which I thought unlikely. I couldn't imagine somebody doing bike tricks at the Vietnam Memorial or the 9/11 Memorial. So the fact that people were really disregarding the seriousness of the space was surprising. And so I wrote to the villager to say, hey, did you know that this was going on? And he did not, and the villager actually published my little blurb in the newspaper the next week.
Oh, kudos. So
it was this
first civic step, you can always write to your local paper and maybe you'll get published in a letter to the editor.
Right, and that was exciting, and my husband was the one who saw it, but did that make any constructive change happen? It just means it was on people's radars.
Yes.
So what I could have done is I could have contacted our city councilman.
You could have.
I could have contacted perhaps the Village Independent Democrats, who could have put me in touch with somebody. I could have contacted the Manhattan Borough President's office. I think that there are a lot of places that people could potentially go with issues that are not criminal.
Right.
It wasn't a police matter. But I just wanted to talk to you to break down, you have a question about education.
Yes.
Who can you go to talk about it? You have a question about noise, besides calling 311. Like, where do you go? So where do clubs and politicians fit in the fabric of neighborhood life?
Yes.
As constituents, we have problems. Who do we talk to and what should we do?
Well, first I'd like to break down the story that you were telling about the AIDS Memorial. So when memorials are erected on public space, obviously they become areas which are open to the public. It might not be, say, against the law, or there might not be a way to stop people from using that space in a way that they want, so long as it's not damaging to it or endangering anybody else. That being said, in a situation like that, you can always call 311 and make a complaint. They might send somebody by, like a police officer, they might send somebody by. You can also go directly to your local precinct. So if you happen to know your local precinct or the precinct which covers the area in which you're seeing something that's problematic, precincts have individual phone numbers that go directly to that headquarters.
Right.
And so you don't call 911 because it's an emergency, you can just call the local police precinct. Also, if you see officers walking by, you can mention it to them. And additionally, in New York City, there are these things called precinct boards, and there are public members of the precinct boards. Now, what are precinct boards? They are...
I never even heard of it.
Yeah, this is kind of obscure. Actually, it's super obscure, but kind of important. Precinct boards are a place where members of the community can go, and some members of the community can serve on a board which oversees police activity in the area.
Okay, whoa. Is it an elected position? Is it an appointed position? How do you find out information about who's on it or how to contact them? That sounds like it could be a helpful thing.
Yes, well, before we go into that, what I do want to stress is that these precinct boards are not really governing institutions. They do have some voice into, and they meet with police leadership in the area, but they have no real official power. They don't get to tell the police what to do,
So
but they can raise issues in the community.
Who made this up? Like, where does it come from? Is it a local politician thing? Like, how does a police...
They are...
Where did it come from?
I don't know where it came from, but there's one for every police precinct.
This is fascinating. Where would somebody find that information besides asking Ben Yi, which is how this all started?
I'm going to tell you, I myself am not fully briefed on this. I looked it up once to try and figure out like how people get on and what have you. But I know about it because I attended a local Democratic Club meeting, in this case Village Independent Democrats, and I met the person who was on the board, and they told me that they were on the board, and I was just like, what is that?
Wow.
And mind you, I've been involved in politics for about 10 years. I learned about these maybe 2 years ago. So like 7 or 8 years into being pretty heavily involved in politics.
Yeah, you know your stuff.
Yes.
Interesting.
So these are pretty obscure.
So
but,
I wanted to add, well,
yes.
as you're going on, I actually contacted one of the head designers
Yes.
of the memorial, who said that it clearly states what the sort of rules are, to treat it respectfully, and that this was a place of somber reflection, and that they would hope that people would be respectful, and that perhaps if somebody saw someone else doing something that wasn't respectful, it would kind of like self-police.
Right.
And I thought, I'm not walking up to some gang of kids on their bikes having super fun and saying, I don't think that's a good idea.
It's the 2000s, it's not the 90s or the 80s anymore.
Or parents who let their kids play on the fountain.
Yes.
When you've got a bunch of toddlers splashing in that fountain and everybody's super happy, I don't know that I feel comfortable being one that going to them and saying, hey, your toddler is having the best time, and sure, it's super fun, but do you think that's appropriate? That's a lot to put on individual citizens in a park space.
One thing I will also add is that there's another set of governing structures, or community structures I should say, which oftentimes deal with issues like this. So a lot of parks will have conservancies or local neighborhood boards that are there to raise money and resource those public spaces.
Right.
So there's for parks and for gardens and such. And so members of that board are folks that you can reach out to. And they, along with organizations like block associations and neighborhood associations, will often run programs where they'll assign volunteers to be the de facto
That's a great suggestion
police
too.
or de facto caretakers.
Right. Block associations is a great idea. I actually reached out to their board of directors. There's a lovely website all about the memorial, and I reached out several times and never heard back.
Right.
So, I don't know, the memorial has been there for a bit, perhaps nobody's checking the email as frequently, but block associations is also a great idea. So, repository of all this information. So now we've got, you could reach out to your Democratic club who has access to politicians, you could reach out to your local politicians, you could go to your precinct, you could go to that police precinct board, you could reach out to your block association. These are all great suggestions. How would people find out how to contact these?
Well, luckily we've got a video. And now I'm going to tell you, and then this will be.
This will magically transform.
Actually, I think this might be the sole repository of all of these things in a single place, because I don't know anywhere that I've ever gone where it's like the hierarchy of things you can do. 311. If you call 311, they might tell you some of this, but actually to delineate. Like if you have a problem, the level of escalation.
This is brilliant, because if it doesn't exist anywhere else, how helpful will this be to people? Sort of like an organizational chart of where to go and who to talk to.
Now it sort of depends on context.
Brilliant, Ben.
Thanks. Well, I would never even thought of that had you not posed the question. But in a general sense, I guess it would go like, if you saw something happening in your neighborhood or you had like a complaint about something that was going on, be it about a memorial or what have you, or a public space, first you probably do want to call 311 and lodge a complaint. That'll get it logged in the city, and that data gets perused every so often. And so you want to make sure that these complaints are popping up in the system. That way you can also refer back to a tracking number if you escalate to the elected level, and you can say, I already took these actions. Then there are some structures which will, organizations which will have some sort of influence or role in the area that you're dealing with. So it could be a neighborhood association or a block association. If it is a public or a private space, there might be a board that governs that space, like a park conservancy or the memorial, directorship. Board of directors. So contacting those organizations which deal specifically with that piece of land or that area are the next level of escalation. Then, if you think something might be criminal or against the law, or even a minor offense, there are misdemeanors. So, defacing public property or endangering the public. You know, some of these things are like just misdemeanors. You wouldn't call 911, they're not emergencies. But if you see a police officer walking by, you might mention it, or you might just call the police precinct.
And let them know.
Or you could go to the precinct after the fact and let them know that it was a problem, and they might send a patrol. Yeah, and so they might send a patrol by there for the next couple of weeks just to make sure that everything's okay, and they'll shoo people away, which will, you know, maybe establish a precedent or a culture which, you know, disincentivizes that in the future. If you want to really escalate this, then you can go to your elected officials who then don't necessarily have power directly over that space, but can start talking about laws or funding for a police presence or some sort of staff presence in that area to promote a certain code of conduct. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Before you go to the electeds, there's also your, obviously, Democratic clubs, which will help raise the issue for electeds and make it something that the
Or even like
raise it
have
to the
an
attention.
introduction, like tell you who to reach out to.
Well, also, yeah, but if you give it to a club, then it will also demonstrate there's a community interest. It's not just a single person, and the same goes for the community board.
Smart.
You can go to the community board. It's the highest level escalation before you get to the police and the actual government. They are essentially the government institution which is charged with overseeing entire swaths of the city, and they have a direct relationship with city council members and the borough president and the mayor, and they have an official advisory role to what the government does.
All right, great. So we're gonna round it out with this.
Yeah.
We're gonna provide a list of as many of our local things as we can.
Yes.
For people who watch these videos.
Sure,
They'll
you
be
want me
up
to
on
go
the
home and
screen.
like Google all this stuff and like
I will help you
dig the whole
Google,
thing?
but I think that that's great, and maybe we can provide that list to local elected officials, to Democratic clubs, and say this would be terrific to put on your websites,
Yeah.
so that people have a resource. This is a concrete resource, and this is a way that you can help the community help themselves when something comes up and they don't know where to go. We'll put together a list of, hey, these are suggestions of perhaps where you can go and find
Yes.
some help.
Maybe I'll add it to my state committee website actually, benjaminyee.com.
Great idea.
And if you're ever in a place where you don't, like if you're out of your own neighborhood and you don't know the information for the institutions where you are, you can actually try to call 311 and ask them for that information. So if you call 311 and say, listen, I'm in Uptown, wherever, can I get the police precinct number, or the number for the police precinct which oversees the block that I'm on, they should be able to tell you that.
Right.
And they should be able to connect you to that.
Good advice.
Same thing with the community board.
All right,
or
so
any of these things.
we've
yeah.
got our work cut out for us.
Yeah.
We've got homework.
This was a good episode, very in the local nitty gritty. So I hope you all enjoyed it.
Yeah, and this, regardless, if you don't live in this area, this all holds true wherever you are.
Certainly
Get
New
to
York
know-
City.
Yeah, get to know local officials or where to go for help, for information,
Oh,
for
yeah.
support on issues. That's always a great thing, and then it connects constituents and the people they're voting for. So there's actually
Yeah.
a sense of getting to know what it is that they do.
Right, and that, you're right, does hold true no matter where
Yeah,
you
and
are
they're,
in
they're
the United
elected
States.
to serve you.
Yep.
So let's give them all something to do that actually is serving us.
Let's
And
do
there
that.
you go. See you next time.
Laters.